And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. A great day as we approach the anniversary of another great day, D-Day. D-Day was tomorrow, June 6th, back in 1943. And there's actually a big new movie about D-Day, which is pretty good. We will get to that and review that, plus the latest Tom Clancy-based spy adventure. That coming up on the Michael Medved Show. Meanwhile, it sounds like a movie, but it's not. There's a crisis on the International Space Station. Nothing like this has happened in 27 years of history of this craft. It is jointly operated by American and Russian astronauts. Does this have some kind of relationship to the tough relationship between the Russian dictatorship under Vladimir Putin and the American leadership under Donald Trump? We will get to that coming up because it seems to have been resolved without harm or destruction, but we will see. And meanwhile, there is also today a potential peace deal which is making progress between the United States and Iran. CNN reports that it hinges on the Trump administration agreeing to release $24 billion. That's a lot of money in frozen Iranian assets. A top Iranian official told CNN on Friday today, warning that the U.S. would, quote, enter into a dark corridor should it resume fighting. When you hear about entering into a dark corridor, it sounds like one of those horrible tunnels in Gaza that were built by that Iranian client, Hamas. The negotiations are at a deadlock, and the U.S. President Donald Trump must break this deadlock, said Mohsen Rezai, who is the military advisor to the hidden Supreme Leader Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei. That's what the aide to Khamenei, who has been heard from nowhere, seen nowhere. People don't even know if he is really alive. There's been no proof of life with the Supreme Leader. But the aide to this invisible man says that the ball is in Trump's court. Is this a pickleball game? Iran has reportedly demanded the release of $12 billion in frozen funds as soon as an interim agreement is reached with the U.S. and signed, and then another $12 billion, totaling $24 billion at a later stage. This is one of those things that is very ironic because you may remember that one of the issues that President Trump, when he was running for president the first time, made as a huge issue is why are we paying money to Iran rather than forcing them in some other way to get rid of their nuclear program. Now we are being asked to guarantee $24 billion in frozen assets. We will see what happens. And meanwhile, NASA has reversed evacuation orders from earlier this morning after assessing an air leak risk with the Russian space agency, which is called Roscosmos. Roscosmos detected 2 leaks, sealed one of them, and said there's no immediate threat to the crew. A disagreement over repair methods led to a safe haven order where astronauts actually evacuated the International Space Station for another craft briefly. The astronauts had never before evacuated the International Space Station in its 27-year history. Air leak rate doubled this morning, heightening concern among mission controllers that they wouldn't have enough air in the space station to breathe normally and safely and healthily. 5 astronauts were forced to seek shelter aboard a spacecraft attached to the space station as their crewmates worked to assess a leak in the Russian-controlled side of the orbiting laboratory. The cracks and leaks on a portion of the space station operated by Russia, located in a transfer tunnel between a module called Zvezda and a docking hatch, have been a known concern for some time. But the NASA statement suggested the situation had potentially worsened. Following new leaks, Roscosmos, the Russian space agency, has elected to proceed with a more extensive repair operation today. The NASA press secretary Bethany Stevens said in a post that they were going ahead with this Russian plan. Out of an abundance of caution, NASA has directed all 4 of the agency's SpaceX crew, 12 members, and NASA astronaut Chris Williams to assemble an elevated safety posture in the Dragon spacecraft while the repair is underway. One can only hope and pray that this repair goes well and that it is safe. Meanwhile, in terms of things going well, there were marathon votes in the Senate running way into the night, past midnight, that continued overnight, and they offered a clear sign of the political pressures facing Republicans as the midterm season kicks into high gear. That is the report from The Hill. Yesterday, Senate Republicans faced a series of tough votes as part of a vote-a-rama on immigration funding, which allowed senators to propose unlimited amendments. The underlying bill ultimately passed sometime after 4 a.m. this morning, but not before senators were put on the record about President Trump's ballroom funding and his potential plans, which have not gone away, for a $1.8 billion anti-weaponization slush fund, and his controversial appointment of mortgage chief Bill Pulte as the director of national intelligence, someone with no intelligence or defense posture background at all. I'm not saying he has no intelligence at all. He has no background in intelligence. The voting series kicked off yesterday morning with the Senate spending nearly 3 hours debating Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's amendment to prohibit the Justice Department from establishing that $1 billion, $776 million anti-weaponization fund. Get it, spells out 1776. That was a fund for MAGA allies who may have pleaded guilty or been convicted of acts like attacking the U.S. Capitol building. That proposal that Attorney General Todd Blanche said this week the administration would not pursue. In other words, the acting Attorney General, who has yet to be confirmed, Todd Blanche, former personal attorney to President Trump, says, no, they're not going ahead with this special fund to apologize and pay money to Trump's political allies who have run into legal trouble. And that the acting attorney general says is not going anywhere, and the president says, yes, it is. And he is the president. But does he have Republican support, enough unanimous Republican support to get it through the House and Senate? There's also a decision on the way about the Kennedy Center. We will get to that and more coming up on The Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved show, there is more controversy about the Kennedy Center. And you'll notice that I am saying Kennedy Center, not Trump Kennedy Center, because a federal judge has already decided with a 98-page decision that the renaming of the Kennedy Center that was ordered by President Trump directly and was done overnight without anyone's consultation or agreement, that renaming of the Kennedy Center was illegal. Why was it illegal? Because it was the Congress of the United States that voted to name this institution when it was established more than a half century ago. And that institution can only have its name changed by a revote of the same institution that named it, which is the Congress of the United States. Congress was not consulted. I'm not at all sure that even with a Republican majority in the Senate and in the House, that majority would go along with the change of name to the Trump Kennedy Center. President Trump, in his 80 years of life, he'll be 80 by next weekend. In his 80 years of life, President Trump has had zero involvement with the Kennedy Center, even as an audience member. And the idea that the center should be named after him as a stroke of vanity is very tough to argue for. In any event, the staff at the Kennedy Center has been instructed to remove Trump's name from the building following a judge's ruling blocking the administration from renaming the institution. Lawyers for the Kennedy Center said in an internal memo yesterday that email signatures, letterheads, and other documents must be changed to reflect the center's original name. Interior and exterior signage must be removed by June 12th. Do you know how ludicrous this is? Not the fact that they are changing it back, but the fact that President Trump ordered people to put the new name on the building, and you could see photographs of it, and all of a sudden, people who even worked at the Kennedy Center didn't realize what was going on would come to work and see it now says the Donald J. Trump Kennedy Center. And really, after a federal judge ruled last week in favor of a legal challenge from Representative Joyce Beatty, the Democrat of Ohio, she is an ex officio member of the Kennedy Center board. Trump suggested he would step back from involvement in the Kennedy Center, yielding authority to Congress. The center has been set to close for renovations on July 5th, but whether it will now remain open is unclear. The board of the Kennedy Center is completely new. It was appointed by Trump, including Trump loyalists, members of his administration, and so forth. They would, of course, go along with the renaming, but that doesn't matter when the original name of the Kennedy Center was provided by Congress. And by the way, President Trump has said he needed to change the name of the center because it was run down and it was rat infested and it was miserable. As you may remember, I had an event at the Kennedy Center that occurred just a few months ago, and just before the official name was changed. And the event we did for our movie, The American Miracle, which talks about the role of divine providence in the first 50 years of the American Republic. It was a beautiful location, and the premiere for our movie, which was there taking place at the Kennedy Center, was not diminished in any way by this ongoing argument about and legal case about whether or not the center is going to be remained. Speaking of embarrassing things in our political structure, a vote counting across California has yielded little change on Wednesday or Thursday after the election Tuesday in the race for governor and mayor of Los Angeles, with a significant portion of the state's mail-in ballots and election day vote still to be counted over the coming days, if not weeks. In other words, they don't have a final result yet. What they do have in the race for governor is a very close race for first place. The Republican candidate, the only surviving Republican candidate, Steve Hilton, who is a former British politician and an aide to the former Prime Minister David Cameron, a British conservative Tory party leader. The Steve Hilton is running first. The Republican is actually winning, but very slightly. It's very close. Steve Hilton has 27% of the votes cast so far, counted so far. And the leading Democrat, Xavier Becerra, former member of the Biden cabinet, former congressman of the United States, former attorney general of California, Becerra has 26%. So it's 27% to 26%. Frankly, it doesn't matter who is in first place because it goes on to the final election. And those are the two people who have a chance to go on to the final election. A third place candidate is Trier, the billionaire, and he has 20%. And there seems to be little choice or chance that he would have so much of a bulge that he would go from 20% and get into the top two, which are 27 and 26% respectively. In the marquee race, the other marquee race, only Karen Bass, the incumbent mayor, had secured a spot in a November runoff election. Republican reality TV star Spencer Pratt, who is highly controversial, saw his hold on second place ahead of Nithya Raman, a socialist city council member. His had advantage over her, and his place in the general election, his margin had narrowed slightly. And in the governor's race, two will also advance to November. The former Fox News host Steve Hilton, Republican, held a slim lead over Xavier Becerra, former Biden administration official, with Tom Steyer, a progressive billionaire, running third, about 6 points below the others. The race is already the most expensive contest for governor in U.S. history. What comes next, and why is it so hard for the ballots to be counted? We will get to that.
The greatest show on God's green earth.
This may be the greatest movement in the history of our country.
The Michael Medved Show.
And in the governor's race in California and in the race for mayor of L.A., it is extraordinary that here it is Friday, and the election was Tuesday, and they haven't gotten the ballots counted. There's a small majority of the ballots counted, but the margins of victory for all of the major elections, and particularly that mayor of Los Angeles and the governor of California, it is still too close to call given the number of votes that still have to be counted. And that has to do with California law, which means that your ballot doesn't have to get in on time to make it for Election Day. It just needs to be postmarked on time. And the post office and delivery systems are just not that rapid, that reliable. And the difficulty about, for instance, not knowing whether the reality TV star, a dark star it is, Spencer Pratt, whether he is going to make it into the general election and beat the socialist city council member, Nithya Raman, to be the main challenger to the incumbent mayor, Karen Bass. We don't have that decided yet because they are still counting these last minute votes. Now, one of the things that people are saying is that the votes that have yet to be counted are disproportionately Democratic votes. Well, of course, it makes sense that there would be disproportionately Democratic votes because the Democratic contest, the number of people who are identified as Democrats and are publicly Democrats who were running for governor or running for mayor was much higher than the handful of Republicans. And that meant that Democrats had a longer time, a tougher time making up their mind because, for instance, in this governor's race, there were only 2 Republicans who were serious candidates for governor. So you just had to choose between 2 of them. Meanwhile, there were, at one point, there were a total of 60 candidates, and there were 8 Democratic candidates to choose from. So they had a tougher challenge trying to make up their mind. The entire system in California is a mess, as most things in California are a mess. And this is very relevant because one of the leading Democratic contenders for president the next time is Gavin Newsom, who presides over this mess. And I do believe that the people who say that Gavin Newsom is a profoundly serious contender for the presidency don't take into account enough the California is a mess factor, where even people on both sides of the aisle, on all sides of the aisle, people with any observance at all of what is actually going on, can't look at California and say, oh, that's what we want for the rest of the country. It just doesn't work. Now, the other side of the country, there is Maine. And Maine also has a messy and complicated election with a truly embarrassing Democratic frontrunner for the nomination for the U.S. Senate, taking on the incumbent U.S. Senator, Republican Susan Collins. The individual I'm talking about, a guy named Graham Plattner, who is described as an oyster farmer. And there's a piece by Kevin Williamson that is very much worth digesting and sharing with you. And Kevin Williamson writes, the standard for public men is not perfection. To write and speak and argue as though it were is simply a cheap and cowardly rhetorical dodge, one that should always and everywhere be treated with contempt it deserves. Should we love a man such as Graham Plattner, who is this Democrat who is the Senate front runner right now for the senator from Maine position? Should we love a man such as Graham Plattner, pray for him, forgive him, help him along, welcome him, encourage him? Yes, of course, all that. Should we endow him with a position of extraordinary public trust? Of course not. We should forego that. We should forego that not only for our own sake, as a matter of prudence and political hygiene, but also for his sake. Putting a man with Plattner's weaknesses into such a position before he has reached a more mature and well-integrated state of life is like asking a newly reformed drunk to work as a bartender. A man with troubles of that sort should go where he will not be tempted. If Graham Plattner had an R next to his name, progressives would get it. If Donald Trump still had a D next to his name, conservatives would get it. But sure, nobody is perfect. Graham Plattner, what's wrong with Graham Plattner? The fact is, he has admitted now that he has done his share of sexting, sending unwanted intimate photographs and texts to young women. And he's continued that practice during his marriage. And what he said about those particular contributions to public discourse is that he only did it for a little while after he got married. Here was Graham Plattner on MS Now saying he's not worried about the pictures and texts that are still floating around. This is clip 18.
I'm not worried about it. I mean, I went, as I've talked to him, I went through my life through a number of years struggling and not exactly acting with the best behavior. I've been very, very open about that. And if people would like to continue to drag things up from that time in my life, I'm sure that we are going to see at some point somebody attempt to do exactly that. Just know that these are things that happened before I became a public figure, before I got into politics, and as a part of my life that I'm very happy to talk about and talk about the struggles within. And so I do think that as we move forward, you know, what we've built up here is really something quite spectacular. It's very new. And I think one of the reasons why it's worked so well is because I have been very open with the people of Maine.
Okay. Very open with the people of Maine. He said in this same interview that his sexting stopped soon after he got married. He got married 3 years ago, and it stopped when it was happening, he said. Okay, when it was happening, it stopped, and it's all within 3 years. And do we had enough problems with members of the House and Senate who have had problems with their social life, to put it mildly? Well, Plattner goes on and admits that he had problems with an ex-girlfriend, but he defines their limits. We'll get to that and more coming up on the Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved Show, talking about Graham Plattner, who is a candidate for the United States Senate, the world's greatest deliberative body, the half of our congressional power center in the United States. There are only 100 people in the U.S. Senate, and now Graham Plattner wants to be one of them, replacing a distinguished and very well respected Republican whose name is Susan Collins. Graham Plattner is a Democrat, of course, and he has been exposed with all kinds of crazy statements, saying that women who are rape victims, for instance, are responsible for their own victimhood because they drink too much, which is not true of rape victims, the underage rape victims. And it turns out that he has now had to acknowledge that continuing well into his adulthood, continuing as was in the last 3 years, he has sent out sexting messages, intimate photographs and messages to people outside his marriage. But he also denies reports that he was rough with an ex-girlfriend, abusive with an ex-girlfriend. And here is the candidate on MS Now talking about the accusations against him by some of the victims of those misdeeds. This is clip 17.
During one, he twisted her arm behind her back, shoved her into a bedroom, and held the door closed from the other side so she couldn't get out, telling her to remain there until she was calm. Eventually, Ms. Fifield said she fell asleep and left the next morning. It hurt, she said, but she added, it didn't cause any injury. It didn't break my arm. Did that happen?
No, it did not. There are some allegations in this piece that I just want to be kind of unequivocal about are simply not true. Anything alleging physicality, anything alleging that I knew what my tattoo was, these are the statements of someone who's politically motivated. In this piece, there's a lot about my struggling, not being a good boyfriend, certainly self-medicating with alcohol. And I've been very upfront since the beginning of this campaign that was a pretty dark period of my life after I came back from my combat service. And that's what that kind of life looks like. And so there are things in this that I absolutely will take responsibility for and have been speaking about openly for months now. But those serious allegations are just not true.
Okay. Again, the question is, who do you believe? And when he refers to his tattoo, what he's referring to is a Nazi tattoo, a death's head tattoo, which was from the SS. And there are very few people who believe that that tattoo, which he got and kept on his body, on his chest for some 20 years, that he had no idea what it meant. No one had told him. And again, if nothing else, it shows if you believe that that's true, that he just thought that was an image that he liked, the image of a skull. That was favored by the most notorious division of the Wehrmacht, of the German forces in World War II, that if he was that historically ignorant that it never occurred to him until he became a candidate for Senate that this was embarrassing, that this didn't work. And then there's also this about Graham Plattner saying that the sexting that he admits that he was involved with has stopped recently, but it was stopped soon after we were married. In other words, that he continued to do sexting, which his wife has said wounded her. He continued to do that after he had become a husband. This is clip 14.
You have talked about self-medicating with alcohol and being pretty messed up when you got back from the service and trying to figure out what you're doing and doing things maybe you wouldn't stand by now and saying things you wouldn't stand by. But this is 2023. And so there's a difference in the time. And I think the first question is like, when did this stop? If there was stuff that you're not proud of that you worked out with your wife, you don't want to talk about the details, when did it stop?
Oh, it stopped when it was happening. I mean, like it was Amy and I, it happened soon after we got married. And we dealt with it very, very early in our relationship. And so that's when it stopped.
Okay. So it stopped while it was happening? When did it start? Would be another inclination for a question, a real question. And then there is Graham Plattner saying that Democratic operatives have not taken objection to any of these fairly damning admissions and exposures, and asked him to drop out of the race. And he basically says he should be forgiven because of the devotion of so many people to his campaign and to him personally. And again, what he's trying to do is to not acknowledge his role as a perpetrator of bad behavior, but to somehow portray himself as a wounded victim. This, again, is Graham Plattner, Democratic candidate, and very progressive Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate. Clip 13.
Have you had any communication with the folks at the DSCC or Democratic operatives who have talked about dropping out, who have talked about other options? Have you received any communication today about that?
No, I have not. And I expect that we will not, primarily because what we've built up here, it's robust. It's very strong. I mean, even just the past couple days, the outpouring of support that Amy and I have seen, it has been deeply humbling. We have people dropping off food at our house. We have neighbors coming across with eggs. Everybody's incredibly concerned about our well-being because they feel like we're being attacked in some way and they want to help protect us. And it is that kind of feeling of community, that feeling of standing up for each other, that I really think embodies this whole campaign. And that's why we're going to beat Susan Collins in November.
Okay. And then again, the question of his truthfulness and being open and honest. This is clip 12 with Graham Plattner.
But your candor, the fact that like whether people can trust you, you would agree is a legitimate issue for voters to consider. That's not some trivia.
No, not at all. I mean, and honestly, that's why I've run the campaign that I've run. I'm sick and tired of a politics where politicians come across as these sort of focus group tested two-dimensional figures who just repeat talking points. It's the reason I've been willing to go out and talk to everyone and talk about really private parts of my life very publicly, and to make sure that people can see that I am open and I am honest, even if it's uncomfortable. I've been doing that the entire time and will continue to do so.
Okay, and then the sexting issue. Did he know the ages of the women who were receiving his texts? Or was he doing that because they wanted to get pictures through the internet of his private parts? We will get to that. In any reasonable context, Graham Plattner ought to be an embarrassment to the Democratic cause. And by the way, there are a number of his future colleagues, if he got elected to the Senate, Democrats colleagues, do not want to be associated with his campaign, including Senator Fetterman, who is creditable for this greatest nation on God's green earth.
Join in your daily dose of debate.
I'm sorry, I cooled my temper here. You had my blood really boiling.
Listen to you occasionally when I'm driving. Turns my stomach every time I do.
You are not always right. Get a grip. You are not always right.
The Michael Medved Show.